There are many important issues in the Alberta provincial election, which is just around the corner, one of them being education. What should our kids be taught? Also, how, when, and where? How much input should parents have in all of this? Our guests today are Donna Trimble, Executive Director of Parents for Choice in Education, and a concerned parent who's becoming a regular contributor here on BCN, Catherine Furukawa. Ladies, welcome to BCN, and let's talk education. Donna, first with you. What does your organization, Parents for Choice in Education, advocate for? What is it all about?
Well, we just have one primary mission, and that is to advocate for high quality, excellent education through maximum parental choice. And that means that there needs to be two key ingredients. Parents have to be able to choose the kind of and style and location of the education of their own children, and schools must be able to provide the setting that those parents are requesting, both what they're requesting regarding the scholastics as well as their cultures and values. And unfortunately, both of those things are being deeply hindered right now in the province.
You mentioned a couple of concerns. What about funding? Is that also a concern for you?
Oh, for sure. There are three key areas actually where I think that choice can either be hindered or improved upon, and those would be funding, right? So providing the funding needed to allow parents to access a variety of locations. Curriculum and resources provided in the schools, are these open-ended and based on outcomes that can be tested nationally and internationally that are skills-based? Or is there a form of indoctrination, that kind of thing happening within the curriculum and resources? How those are modeled can impact choice. And of course, after those two things, there's communication with parents. So the ability to read report cards, but also the ability of school staff to communicate openly with parents. And right now we have legal restrictions on that. So all three of those things impact choice, and all of them can either be improved or damaged.
Now, Catherine, as a mom of two young girls, what are some of your concerns of what's being taught in schools today?
Hal, I think that big concerns for me, with my oldest being in kindergarten, when I look at potential changes to our curriculum with social studies and maybe facts being altered to being taught as what is fair rather than what is factual information in social studies or in health class. Certainly when my girls get to an age where they are in sexual education classes, I would definitely have some concerns with what's being taught there in terms of what is age appropriate and what lines up with our morals and values as a family.
And how about you, Donna? What are some of your concerns with the current curriculum?
To be honest with you, I think that the problem with the current curriculum is how it's being developed. So what we would like to see is that there be outreach to end users, people like those post-secondary professors that are welcoming our grade 12 students, entrepreneurs, tradespeople. What is it that they need on a scholastic basis? Actual literacy, numeracy, science, those kinds of outcomes. And then that should be developed back so that you have very, very strong outcome, skills-based parameters in place that can be tested. As for how it's taught, what is taught, what the focuses are, we feel like that should be completely freed up, right? So the schools, the teachers in the classroom should be able to follow the passions of the students, whether that's the arts, whether that's a history base, whether that's a faith base or a second language or sports. It shouldn't matter so long as at the end of every school year, using something like a national or international testing system like the Canadian Test for Basic Skills, each school classroom can prove that they're not leaving any students behind, or they're doing the best they can to make sure students are at grade level. The rest of it should be completely freed up, and that would get us away from this tendency, regardless of what government's in place, of governments using the curriculum to push their own ideas, their own worldviews, their own ideologies. That's unacceptable. We should be giving the power of what and how it's taught back to the schools and just testing for those skills.
Catherine, you expressed earlier about your concerns about what's being taught when it comes to sex ed, the sex ed curriculum. Do you think maybe kids are being taught a little too much too soon?
I would think absolutely they are. As consent age in Canada has gone down over the years, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is right for our children to be exposed and knowledgeable about all that they can potentially consent to. I think that we are starting to expose our children far too early to things that are far above their maturity level.
Now, Donna, you say one of the things you want to see in an MLA is a desire to restore parents as primary caregivers and educators of their own children instead of legislating secrecy. Can you explain that?
Right. So we've had over the past, since the PC government, prior to this NDP government, the passage of education legislation under things like Bill 10 and Bill 24, Bill 24 being the most recent legislation. And that legislation puts a legal framework in place that completely removes the capacity of staff to use their professional judgment to decide when it is most important to reach out to parents in relation to, say, sexual and gender concerns that that child may have in the classroom. We think that's incredibly dangerous. It's unfair and it deteriorates the partnership between teachers and parents. So staff need to have the capacity to reach out to parents when they deem it necessary for the safety and care of students. And parents need to feel confident that they will be kept in the loop with regards to the most important needs of their kids. The other thing that Bill 24 did is it removed the restrictions to sexual education or sexual content within gay straight alliances, queer straight alliances, these types of student clubs, meaning the material that right now a parent is provided with that you must have notification and opt-out provisions for in the classroom, that exact same material can be provided to children in clubs in school during school hours, and a parent would not be told. So it's an exception that should be reversed. So things like that are of grave concern. So we would ask actually for the complete removal of all of the changes that were incurred by the unconstitutional passage of Bill 24. There's much more that does that we probably don't have enough time to talk about today, but the bottom line is because of that legislation, we have children that are increasingly isolated, a breakdown of the parent-child bond, a breakdown of the teacher-parent partnership, and a removal of the autonomy of schools to actually meet the needs of children in their own classrooms, and it's completely unacceptable.
Catherine, let me ask you something as a concerned mom of two girls. How important is that relationship between parent and teacher?
For me, Hal, it's incredibly important. When I dropped my daughter off for kindergarten this year, her teacher sent home a note with all of us with a care package, a Kleenex to dry our eyes, a tea bag to go home and relax with a cup of tea. But in her note, she said, we are partnering in this. And for me, that is so imperative to education because I can't be with my child all the time. I'm not a teacher, but I certainly want it to be a partnership, what we are doing at home and what's happening at school, that we're working together, that I know what's being taught at school so that we can encourage that at home and help develop those skills in our daughters.
So those open lines of communication are vital, aren't they?
100%.
For the success of the education of your kids.
Absolutely.
Now, Parents for Choice in Education would also like to see the autonomy of schools restored so that they can offer the settings that families desire and expect, including faith-based choices, Donna?
Absolutely, absolutely. The bottom line is that parents are primarily sending their children to school because they want them to be competitive on the world stage after graduation. They want them well taught in those basic educational skills, but they also want to know that their cultures and values will be respected. All of us live in a pluralistic and diverse society, and that needs to be respected. Presently, we have a government in place that is actually threatening to shut down some up to 24, 25 of our faith-based independent schools and other independent schools that want to maintain their autonomy in relation to how they teach their students about how to be anti-bullying policies, safe and caring policies, all of that kind of stuff. We can't have that kind of overreach from government. That isn't what a free society looks like. And so again, that is something that came into place with the passage of Bill 24 and needs to be reversed.
So Catherine, how important is that to you for having faith-based options available for you and your family?
For us, it's very important. Our daughter, who's in kindergarten right now, goes to a Catholic school. And while we are not practicing Catholics, we are a faith-based family. And so for us, there are many similarities in what they're taught in religion to what we practice in our home. And that was a huge determining factor in us deciding what school we would send our daughter to.
And you know what? I did the same with my children when they were younger, growing up in Southern Ontario. We didn't have the funding to put them into a private school, a Christian school, so the next best thing for us was the Catholic school system, but the fundamentals were taught there, so we really appreciated that, right? And having that structure at the same time with God and with Jesus and what that relationship means. So Donna, with these important education issues on the table, Albertans really need to know who they should vote for. How is Parents for Choice in Education helping citizens really get ready for the big election coming up?
You know what, I would tell everyone out there that's listening to this broadcast to go to our website at parentchoice.ca. Right at the top of our website page, as well as in our blog stream, you're going to find a fantastic resource. I don't mean to toot our own horn, but the bottom line is that this resource is going to provide you the one-stop shop to get to know your candidates in your area. And that's exactly what the resource is called, Get to Know Your Candidates. We are nonpartisan, but the bottom line is that we provide you with a way to identify your riding, identify a list of candidates from all of the different parties that we have access to, their contact information, key questions to ask, as well as backgrounder information on stuff like Bill 10, Bill 24, the ramifications to your children's education as a result of those pieces of unconstitutional law that have been put in place, and other issues around parental choice in education. So please come to our website, and you're going to be able to really quickly get to know your candidates. We need to remember that the 87 people that we elect in 20 days are the lawmakers for the next 3-4 years in our province, and they're going to have a huge impact on what education looks like in this province. We're in a really bad place right now, and we need a government in place that's going to honor parents as the primary caregivers and educators of their children. So please do your homework and vote wisely.
Yeah, it's so important to be well educated before we go out and vote on April 16th. Catherine, what are some of the important election issues for you when it comes to your children's education?
Definitely that parental choice for us is incredibly important. Like Donna mentioned, it starts to kind of teeter on that line of infringing on our freedom of speech when we start to take this responsibility away from parents from being able to pick what their education looks like for their children. And so for my husband and I, this is the first election that I have children who are school age, and for us it is a very huge issue in this election. Education platforms are definitely something that we will be watching.
So Donna, do most people tend to just sit back and watch? Do we need more parents to do more than just vote, but to maybe get involved to make things happen?
Absolutely. That's another thing that we say in our resource. We did yesterday also release a secondary resource 7 days into this election writ, and that provides as much information as we could find as of yesterday, the publication date, on the education platforms of as many parties as we could find information on. So you can find that at the top of our blog at parentchoice.ca. And in that, we remind you, if you find a candidate that you really believe in, please consider volunteering, consider financially supporting. It really makes a difference to have people door knocking on the ground, putting in signs. If you really believe in a candidate, please support them. It's just 20 days and it's the next 4 years of our lives. So it's a really important thing to be involved in. Personally, I feel like people are paying more and more attention. Our base in particular is incredibly involved. So become a part of that base, sign up for our newsletters, and let's take education back in this province.
What about asking the candidates, what will you do to ensure that teachers deal with controversial issues by promoting critical inquiry rather than advocacy, and to teach students how to think rather than what to think?
Well, you know what? We have, I believe it's 6 key open-ended questions available again on that Get to Know Your Candidates resource, so that you can really dig deep when you're talking to these candidates. You can even have them at the door printed up, so if somebody shows up at your door knocking, you can ask these open-ended questions, and it's going to let you do 2 things. It's going to let you identify whether your candidate cares about education and understands it deeply. So that's number 1. And number 2, where do they stand? Do they really understand what choice looks like? Because you say, you know what, we believe in education choice. Does that mean giving people the superficial ability to pick Catholic, public, independent, without an understanding of the way that all of those settings are being manipulated and infringed upon from the inside out through legislation, so that they're all becoming one-size-fits-all institutions and just different by name? That's the depth of understanding candidates need to bring to the table in education this go around, because that's what's happening. So it's not enough for a candidate to look at you at the door and say, you know what, we believe in choice. What does that mean? Do you think that this legislation that's being passed should, and the way that curriculum is being developed and funding models, all of these things, do you think that government needs to get out of the way so that education settings can actually provide a unique product that parents are asking for? Because right now that is not what is happening. So that's right on our website.
So Catherine, rather than advocacy, how about teaching students how to think rather than what to think?
I think that's super important, Hal. when we teach our children to think as opposed to what to think, our education programs become about the children and less about a government agenda that we're trying to push on our children while we are educating them.
Especially if we don't agree with those ideologies, right?
100%, yeah.
Donna Trimble, Executive Director of Parents for Choice in Education, and Concerned Parent, Catherine Furukawa. Ladies, thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having us.